everyone, and welcome to the 25th episode of Dust James, Anti-Imperialist America. I'm attempting two new things today. I am currently streaming on both my YouTube channel and Facebook. I am also live on location at an undisclosed highway, interstate, somewhere in Virginia, in a flatbed tractor trailer on the side of a highway in an undisclosed rest area. Um, I'm not wearing my normal suit and tie. Just finished a hard day work on the road, and I'm having dinner with y'all. This unnamed beef stew. Mm. Just a few thoughts, kind of run the show. First of all, I'd like to apologize. Um, right after I interviewed the very interesting and inspiring young man, Keaton Mansfield of the New American Movement. People can go on there and check that out. Right after I interviewed him, I learned the news that my younger brother had died in a horrible vehicle accident. And I was unable to do the study with comrade David Fox from Australia. So I just want to apologize. I made that announcement right before I heard the news, and it's understandable. I was in no shape to do that. I took the allotted 3 days, the brutal capitalist U.S. system's 3 days off for grieving, and back to work. It's still bothering me some, but if I can work for the capitalist, I can be here with y'all promoting socialism. I'm using a new program, Be Live. Not a promotion, just the easiest thing I can figure out to use. But I'm not sure. I can see that I have 5 people watching. If people could comment, yes. There you go. I see I got a comment from YouTube. If somebody could on Facebook could comment, I could see if comments are coming through on Facebook as well. That'd be good. And thank you, DPickle134. Thank you. Yeah, yeah, it was. So that was a great interview I did with Keaton Mansfield, and the week before that. I got home late off the road, and I only did I did 2 interviews last week. One with a comrade from New Zealand about the insidiousness of cancel culture. Good interview. And I interviewed Karina Akri-Paez of Telly Hagwire, and also some of her involvement in the movement for democracy in the United States, because this is a capitalist dictatorship. Recommend people looking at all 3 of those interviews that were posted. I've got a wonderful show for y'all today. Quick few comments. Depending on how much engagement, I'll try to go at least half an hour, if not further. So I'll get right into today's talk. Let me get another sip of this unnamed beef stew. Hope everyone's doing well out there. Hopefully the capitalist didn't beat you down too hard today. There's a common saying that goes around: if you don't stand for anything, you'll fall. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for everything. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for everything. Well, I would like to make that statement a little more detailed to the current political situation in the United States. And if you are not explicitly anti-imperialist, you will be manipulated to work for the imperialist. It doesn't matter your intentions, it doesn't matter what you go into it. If you don't have a material scientific understanding of what imperialism is, and we'll briefly go over what imperialism is. Imperialism is bigger than any issue we face. It's bigger than any moral issue. It's bigger than any discrimination issue of gender, race. It is the political economic system, the global political economic system that keeps the majority of the world in poverty, that creates the wars, that causes and forces mass migration, that allows the capitalist to exploit us and the people around the world. Monopoly capitalism, imperialism is the main issue and the main enemy of all of humanity. And if you are not explicitly anti-imperialist, if you do not have a material understanding of what imperialism is, you will eventually be manipulated to work for the imperialist. And I've seen it happen over and over again to respected people. First case in point, John Lewis. John Lewis was a heroic freedom fighter for the civil rights struggle for the African American people in the United States. He part of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. He marched with Martin Luther King across the bridge, a pivotal moment in the civil rights struggle. That's been promoted amongst the tendency in the civil rights struggle, which was the nonviolent side of that. The capitalists like to hold that up is the pivotal civil rights figures and movement, the nonviolent side. They tend to gloss over or somewhat criticize more self-defense figures like the Panthers or Malcolm X. But John Lewis, nonetheless, was a heroic, courageous figure that put his life on the line to give the little bit of democratic rights that African American people, workers, poor folks, voting rights in this country. And there was just they memorialized him. He became one of the first African American legislators. And his recent death, he was honored in state burial. He was given top regard, given a horse carriage to go across the bridge that he was brutally beat up on with fighting in the civil rights movement for basic voting rights. But recently, more recent times, he backed Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton, disgusting, evil figure, not because Fox News says it, because of her actions that I've obtained from material perspective. The Hillary Clinton State Department destroyed the country of Libya. Libya, that built socialism in Africa, that was investing all over Africa, that irrigated the desert. It was the Hillary Clinton State Department, along with the imperialists, the French imperialists, who destroyed Libya. Libya went from the most prosperous nation in Africa to absolute utter chaos and despair. A slave trade returned to Libya. Hillary Clinton called African American people super predators. Hillary Clinton's husband, which she supported, signed the crime bill into law. Joe Biden wrote the crime bill. The crime bill exponentially grew new Jim Crow. The system of new Jim Crow is the unjust and unnecessary imprisonment of poor black and brown people. And when you imprison poor black and brown people, you criminalize them. You take away their job opportunities. You take away their gun rights. You take away their voting rights. So what was John Lewis doing backing Hillary Clinton? He didn't have scientific material analysis of what imperialism is. Or if he did, he denied it, became an opportunist, and was used for the very system he opposed, imperialism, which continues to take voting rights away from poor black and brown people in the United States. You had a heroic civil rights leader become an agent of imperialism. If you are not actively anti-imperialist, you will be manipulated to become an agent of the U.S. imperialist. That is how powerful they are. That is how manipulative they are. They control the media. They control what is taught in our school systems. They control, through this, they control our very dialogue in society. And they spend massive amount of money to do this, to control political bodies, to control our understanding. And through a scientific socialist, materialist analysis, we can understand this is the enemy of all humanity. The imperialism, the Democrats and Republicans are the reason why we're forced to work these long hours with not enough pay, with shrinking benefits, with less services. While our immigrant brothers and sisters are forced across borders because of the poverty caused by U.S. imperialist policies like NAFTA that Bill Clinton signed into law, that Hillary Clinton supported. John Lewis, a great fighter for freedom, became an agent of the imperialist. Sad. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez recently had she was recently called horrible names in Congress, and the person, I'm going to talk a little bit about this. And she gave a speech defending herself. Beautiful speech. Right on. She gave a speech saying, my mom didn't teach me to be raised like that. I will stand up against that. And the racist, vile reactionary tried to give the excuse of his poverty to say that some kind of, he never really gave an apology. He tried to use almost his former poverty to kind of gloss over, well, like, I'm oppressed too, or I was, but now he's also a part of imperialism. And he represents reactionaryism and sexism and racism, the person who said those vile things to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And this is obvious. And this is and the corporate media is showing this heroic speech. What they don't tell you is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has voted to fund ICE. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has voted to fund the military, has voted for war. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is an imperialist. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez met with the fascist coup maker, the fascist president in Bolivia that overthrew, from a CIA-backed coup, took out the socialist indigenous leader, Evo Morales. AOC met with her, met with this leader that is mass murdering indigenous people for the imperialist system. AOC is an imperialist. AOC voted for the bailout. The recent bailout is poor black and brown people are dying from COVID. And we only got, and half of Americans are unemployed. They're about to start evicting people. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez voted for the bailout of the rich. Billions of dollars given to the most wealthy to bail out Wall Street, to bail out capitalism. COVID is real. We poor black and brown folks are dying from COVID. It's no conspiracy. But the ruling class has acted almost in a perfect way to harness the problems of overproduction and shift them to the working class, to postpone the inevitable further fall produced by overproduction. And AOC voted for that bailout. AOC is an imperialist. AOC, regardless of her intentions, regardless of the movement that put her there, is an imperialist. If you are not inherently anti-imperialist, if you don't understand scientific socialism, or you don't even have to call it socialism. If you don't have the understanding of what imperialism, it will use you like a rag against your own interests. It will use you to manipulate and sheepdog the working class into backing the imperialist Democratic Party. So I kind of got off on a tangent there. I want to discuss further the current economic collapse, the current economic problems that would eventually lead to a further economic collapse. Let me take a quick spoonful of my dinner here. So half of Americans are unemployed. A lot of people were simply fired or laid off. And it's almost like Trump had his perfect thing. So every 10 years or so, capitalism will have a crisis. They have this crisis because of overproduction. Overproduction is because workers are extracted surplus value, which means we produce more than we get back. Therefore, we're exploited. The capitalists produce a product. Who do they sell this product to? The workers. Because they need to make a profit, they will never make back. They will never be able to sell what we produce, because the value of the products is our wages plus their profits. So our wages will never buy back what they produce because they sell it for profits plus our wages. We never buy it back. And because of this, and they come up with credit schemes over the years to try to keep capitalism going, and it just makes it have a bigger fall, like in 2008. But so if the problem is the capitalists have too much stuff, what has happened in the recent crisis? Well, they're not producing as much stuff. There's not as much services. So, and people kind of save their money up. People who kept working were able to save their money. Cars are selling like crazy right now amongst the people that work. So a good way of postponing the inevitable fall, the process is overproduction. If you produce less, then you will stall that inevitable crisis. So the crisis, which was going to have the capitalists go bankrupt, has been averted. And they've just simply implemented austerity by giving us little to no benefits, having us lose our job. We are suffering the crisis. They've got bailed out. They're fine. Capitalism was saved. We, the working class, are bearing the problems of the crisis of capitalism. It's not Corona, as the Democrats would say, or Trump would say. It is this inevitable fall was going to happen because of capitalism. And I believe there will be a further fall. The capitalists simply found a way to, at the meantime, prevent further collapse by shifting the burden of the problems of overproduction to the working class. So back to my topic. I mentioned AOC, works for the Imperialist. There's actually a very beautiful group of young folks that I had the privilege of working with. I grew up in North Carolina. There was massive migration from Mexico mostly and throughout Latin America. And a lot of people I went to school with were undocumented, which means they came here as children. Um, they grew up here, they were raised here. This is their home. And then by the time they graduate high school and are ready to go to college, they try to fill out for financial aid and they can't because they don't have a social security number. They learn that they're second class citizens. They don't have documented status. And their parents worked here for decades building this country, and they have no rights here. It's almost like the continuation of a underclass of workers through documented status, and that documented status just happens to fall upon indigenous people in an Anglo racist settler empire. Indigenous people are undocumented and work for less through functions of legal status. Um, so, and there was movements that started to find to go against this injustice. People were desperate. People killed themselves when they found out the news that they couldn't easily go to college as their classmates. This group of folks were called dreamers, and the media would say, mostly the liberal media would portray dreamers as valedictorians, and they would show like this perfect person that totally deserves to be here. And it was kind of liberal, but I mean, in the movement, they had their own. The groups were empowered and they had their own say. And they were speaking up against this, and they said that everyone deserves documented status. The parents deserve documented status. People that could look into socialism and Marxism could see this is just further capitalist exploitation, imperialist exploitation of oppressed nations, forced migration. And a lot of the dreamers were funneled into supporting the Democrats. And one of the worst things that happened was, okay, first of all, the Dream Act was written by the Pentagon. People that were forced here because countries were poor because of imperialism. The Pentagon wrote the Dream Act to try to pressure undocumented youths into the military to go kill other poor black and brown people. And it went as far as there was a dream army of people that really wanted to join the military that would march in formation and be like, hey, let us go kill poor black and brown people. Just give us our papers. And this was manipulation of a positive fight for human dignity, for rights, for workers' rights, the undocumented people, the undocumented children, to have their basic human dignity was manipulated by the State Department, the imperialists, to support U.S. imperialism, the same system that keeps us poor here, the same system that built a wall. The Democrats built a wall on the 90s. The Democrats passed NAFTA and killed people and put people into starvation throughout southern Mexico. And then the system of imperialism has killed hundreds of thousands of people crossing the border. I know plenty of friends, and everyone has a family member that died trying to cross the border because of imperialism. People come here demanding rights, and they're like, oh, I want to fight for U.S. imperialism. If you do not actively stand against imperialism, you become a pawn of the imperialist, the greatest enemy of all of humanity. Imperialism led by U.S. imperialism. Let me take a bit of my beef soup. It says I got 8 people out there. If people want to say where they came from, anybody got any questions or comments, post it right up there. I know I see comments. Comment where you're at. I'll give you a shout out. Any question, just put some comments in there. Keep this going. I think I got about 5 more minutes of material. I hope to go further if people want to comment. Another thing that happened in this period, I want to give a big shout out to Nick of Flame of Liberation. Flame of Liberation on YouTube and on Facebook is a great, powerful anti-imperialist page that Flame of Liberation has a video about Baathism, a presentation on Baathism, and it talks about the party of the Baathists, Arab Socialist, which where basically was the inspiration for the anti-imperialist socialist government of both Syria and the anti-imperialist government in Iraq under Saddam, two governments that helped and build up resources for the people and were brutally attacked by U.S. imperialism, both Iraq and Syria. Great presentation. He did an interview with another great imperialist, Arab imperialist, Richard Medhurst. Richard Medhurst, I recommend people checking his stuff out. Wow. He says as a kid somewhere, I think, I'm not sure where he was from, but he noticed he was mentioned the bombs of U.S. imperialism firsthand as a child. So he has no sympathy for the Democrats. No, not even. He actually pointed out some of the problems with the Green Party, and very articulately, which is interesting. And I recommend people checking out. So Richard Medhurst interviewed Nick of Flame of Liberation, and I shared it on my Anti-Imperialist America page, shared it on my personal page. That is a great interview. Recommend people getting on that. Also, a lot of folks on here are also fans of Caleb Maupin. Caleb Maupin's Saturday live. I have seen every single live that Caleb Maupin has done. Saturdays. I know he recently did one Tuesday, which was good as well. But Saturdays Caleb Maupin's live was the best live he has ever done. And he laid it out plain and simple. The main enemy is imperialism. All these other issues can be manipulated. Issues of gender can be manipulated. Issues of race can be manipulated. It's emotionalism versus materialism. You can get emotional about racial oppression, about gender oppression, and the capitalists can come off as if, the liberal capitalists can come off as if they support these issues, without actually changing the material basis that institutionalizes these forms of oppression. And if they're able to do that, you get the good feeling as if you did something good, but you didn't actually do anything to fix it. So the powers that be, the capitalists, will promote and control and manipulate our movements in ways that benefit them and not the proletariat. We need to build a movement that can take power to the people. I say power to the people on everything I do. We need power. Working people need power. Oppressed nations need power. We need to use that power to dismantle the system of imperialism. Imperialism is the pig shooting poor black and brown people in the street. Imperialism is if we go on strike, they send in the police to stop that strike. Imperialism is Black Lives Matter in the street. The federal government sending goons. Everyone likes to blame that on Trump. And yes, he is culpable, and yes, he is part of it. But Obama did very similar things. There was also a fight on Facebook. I kind of noticed that they were biased. So there was an activist. There was an activist that said Obama signed the bill into law that allowed the federal agents to harass or kill and harass the protesters, which isn't legally or technically true. Well, it is. It is legal. It is legally and technically true. But basically, on a technicality, like it said that if you're suspected, Obama signed the National Defense Authorization Act in 2011 for the 2012 year. The National Defense Authorization Act is the approval of the military budget that is done annually. And often there's things attached to this. The DREAM Act was attached to a National Defense Authorization Act. Not sure which year. In 2011, there was a provision attached to it that if you were suspected of terrorism, that you do not have a right to a trial, that you can be detained or killed. You can be detained indefinitely or even killed. It's already been used. It's been used on, I think, a teenage American citizen was killed with this legal provision by the military. So it wasn't it's not the military, it's ICE that's attacking these protesters. But Obama laid down some of the legal and historical precedents that makes this possible. So an activist said Obama signed the bill into law that legalized the troops on the streets. And then Facebook, along with Political Fact and the AP Press, said no, that is untrue. They said no, that is untrue on a technicality. The technicality was that, well, and Trump already called them terrorists, so that defeats that part of it. So yes, they have the legal justification or that, but the technicality was it was ICE and not the military. But this is very deceptive. What Facebook, PolitiFact, and the Associated Press did. They made it sound like it was completely untrue. But no, the activist was right on. Even though the specific law doesn't apply to the specific situation, Obama helped build the political precedent, the legal justification and precedent that build up to the police state that Trump has taken power over. Obama and Trump are two sides of the same imperialist, low-wage police state coin. Voting Joe Biden in is not going to fix this. And this is another one. Everyone had hopes and dreams in Obama. And the U.S. imperialists were able to put large portions of the African-American people asleep. African-American people have been some of the most prominent revolutionaries in the United States. The Black Panthers, civil rights struggle, anti-war movement. Martin Luther King came out against the war in Vietnam. So the African-American people have been some of the most militantly anti-imperialist freedom fighters in the United States. And Obama, with false hopes and promises, was able to put large portions of the African-American people to sleep, manipulated by imperialism. Because the average person in general, doesn't have a materialist scientific understanding, or at least an understanding that imperialism, the economic political system, the system of monopoly capitalists, the system where the bankers and the oil companies control our economy. They control the economy here, they exploit people here, And then they use that to build a military to invade whoever doesn't go along with their oppressive world economic order. The second countries like Libya, Iraq, Syria, Venezuela defined a way to get outside of their system, outside of their exploitative exploitation that these banks and oil companies profit from. They carry out coups, they carry out sabotage, they carry out sanctions, brutal war sanctions. Sanctions are war. Sanctions starve people. There's people in Iran dying, in Venezuela dying because the imperialists own have the countries that produce. There's certain countries that produce certain medical supplies are not available to the countries that the U.S. is holding sanctions against, and these sanctions are literally killing people. This is imperialism. To be able to fight imperialism, we need to build power. We need to build a power strong enough to dismantle these systems. I got a 3-point plan that will change America from an imperialist colonial settler state to a socialist state that can do win-win trade, that can build up its neighbors. Number one, end the wars. Dismantle imperialism. Get rid of the unjust trade laws that are forcing people here. Fundamentally reform the police. Fundamentally change the police. Abolish the police as they currently exist. And have the police run by the communities to enforce those communities, not to reinforce racial and class oppression, but have the police force to actually protect the community. Dismantle the systems of war. Get rid of the entire military budget. Have a Department of Peace that is interested only in defense. Stop the CIA coups all over the place and the wars. Number two, we need the economic resources to restructure. The American people should own the coal, should own, yeah, and I said coal. A lot of the liberal schemes, they like to promote the carbon capping. The entire environmentalist movement has been hijacked by the capitalists. Al Gore doesn't give a shit about global warming. Al Gore has found a way to use the environment to put down upcoming countries, number one, and to do these weird schemes like a lot of what they call green energy. I recently watched a movie. I think it was Michael Moore's new movie, which was horribly criticized, and I have problems with it too. It's rather Malthusian. It's like civilization can't advance, but they pointed out that some of the capitalist liberals' environmental schemes are just money-making schemes that don't actually fix the issues. A lot of what passes for renewable energy and biodiesel or biofuels is trees. They're deforesting the Amazon and deforesting. Well, I think we immediately, if we really want to fix the environmental issue, we cannot let the energy sector be run for profit. We need to nationalize coal, nationalize timber, nationalize gas, and run it for the benefit of the people and an economic and an environmentally safe as we can. We cannot no longer trust the profit system that is destroying our environment. It's only through a socialist system. We need to nationalize the banks. That's another power of imperialist. The imperialist is the era of finance capital dominance. We nationalize the banks, and we decide who we can and can't give loans to democratically, scientifically, rationally. Invest in the good things in society, not in environmental devastation and destruction. Number one, end the wars. Number two, nationalize the resources. And number three, build up this country. Build it in a way, build schools, build roads, build healthcare systems. Give people a better standard of living. Give people more time to put into the arts. Make the world a better place. That is what scientific socialism, and we will not get there unless we have masses of people that understand that if you are not explicitly anti-imperialist, you will be manipulated and used by the imperialist against us. One day we'll have all power to the people. Thank you, comrades.